My dad disowned me at his retirement party, and his coworkers destroyed his reputation. Dad looked right at me during his retirement speech and said, "Honestly, I tell people I only have one son. It's less embarrassing than explaining what the other one does for a living." 80 of his coworkers laughed, while my brother Kyle stood next to him grinning. I'm a paramedic. Kyle's an engineer at Tesla. In my family, that's the difference between being the golden child and being invisible. Dad spent 20 minutes showing slides of Kyle's projects and awards, never mentioned my name once. When his boss asked about his family, Dad smiled and said, "I have one son who made me proud." Kyle followed in my footsteps into engineering. As for my other kid, not everyone inherits talent. The room erupted in laughter. My face burned hot, but I stayed quiet because Mom was gripping my arm, silently begging me not to cause a scene. But it got worse. Dad's best friend Richard stood up for a toast. "Here's to Daniel, a man who raised a son to be just like him, one amazing engineer." He clinked glasses with Kyle while I stood 3 feet away. Dad's secretary Linda walked over with this pitying smile. "Don't feel bad, honey. Not everyone can handle college. Have you thought about going back to school? It's never too late to fix your mistakes," my aunt chimed in. "You know, hospitals are always hiring janitors. That's still medical adjacent, right?" Kyle walked over and whispered loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Some of us just have higher standards. Not everyone can cut it in a real profession like engineering." Dad heard him and nodded with this proud look on his face. Then he announced to the whole room, "My son Kyle here is being promoted to senior engineer next month. That's what happens when you make the right choices in life." Everyone clapped while I stood there like furniture. Mom squeezed my hand but said nothing. She never did. That's when I decided they'd all know the truth. See, 3 months ago, I responded to a call at Dad's office building. Heart attack on the 3rd floor. When I got there, the victim was Jeffrey, Dad's company CFO. While I was doing chest compressions, Jeffrey grabbed my shirt and whispered, "Tell them about the accounts. Daniel's been stealing. Check the offshore transfers." Then he passed out again. I saved his life that day, got his heart beating, got him breathing. But afterward, Jeffrey was terrified, said Dad had too much power in the company, too many friends in high places. Nobody would believe him over Dad, the employee of the decade. But Jeffrey had emailed me everything before he chickened out. Bank statements, fake invoices, wire transfers to the Cayman Islands, $600,000 over 8 years. My dad had been systematically robbing his own company while everyone praised him. I stood up and looked around the room. "Since we're being honest tonight, let me share something. Dad's been embezzling from this company for 8 years. I have the bank statements, the offshore accounts, all the evidence." The room exploded in laughter. Linda shook her head. "This is sad. You're trying to ruin your own father's retirement because you're jealous." Richard raised his glass. "Kid, your dad is the most honest man I know. This is pathetic." Dad smiled and put his arm around Kyle. "Everyone can see he's lying. He's bitter about his life choices and trying to drag me down. I'm sorry you all had to witness this." The CEO walked over and patted Dad's shoulder. "Daniel, don't let him ruin your night. We all know you built this company's reputation on integrity." Kyle stepped close to me. "You're embarrassing yourself. Just leave before you make this worse." Everyone was staring at me like I was insane. Dad's coworkers were actually booing me. Some guy in the back yelled, "Get a real job and stop lying about your dad." The doors burst open. Jeffrey walked in, pale and shaking, flanked by 2 FBI agents. He pointed directly at Dad. "That's him. That's the man who's been stealing from us for years." The agents walked straight to Dad while Jeffrey pulled out folders. I finally got the courage to come forward. 8 years of evidence, fake vendor invoices, wire transfers to offshore accounts, forged approval forms. One agent handcuffed Dad while reading him his rights. The CEO's face went white as Jeffrey handed him the documents. $600,000, Daniel. You robbed us while we gave you awards." The room erupted in chaos. Coworkers surrounded Jeffrey demanding to see the proof. Linda gasped when she saw her signature forged on dozens of approval forms. Richard backed away from Dad like he was radioactive. "I recommended you for VP. I vouched for you to everyone." The CEO's voice cut through the noise. "You're fired, Daniel. We're pressing full charges. Securities fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement. You're finished." Kyle stood frozen, watching his perfect hero get dragged away. Dad looked at me, face red with rage. "You did this. You destroyed me." I shook my head. "No, you did this to yourself. I just stopped covering for you." The agents led him out while his coworkers shouted accusations. Linda was sobbing. Richard was on the phone with lawyers. The CEO was already sending emergency emails to the board. I grabbed my jacket and walked to the exit. Mom tried to follow me, but I just kissed her cheek and kept walking. Behind me, I heard Kyle desperately telling the CEO he knew nothing, begging them not to investigate him too.